I have a confession to make. For maybe my entire life, the name Good Friday just never sat right with me. It felt like a contradiction, a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. How could a day that's all about the brutal crucifixion and death of Jesus Christ be called good? It's a day defined by betrayal, suffering, and unimaginable sorrow. If you've ever seen a depiction of the Passion, you know it's just agonizing. I always thought, shouldn't we call it Sorrowful Friday or Tragic Friday? In fact, in German, it's called Karfreitag, which means exactly that, Sorrowful Friday. I wrestled with that question for years, every single time Holy Week rolled around. It felt like a piece of the puzzle was missing. But then, I stumbled upon a story, a mix of a language deep dive and a powerful narrative, that completely changed my perspective. In this video, I want to share that discovery with you, because it's what finally helped me grasp the profound meaning behind this sacred day. It's a story that unlocked not just a word, but a whole new way of looking at faith, sacrifice, and what it truly means for something to be good. Before we get to the story that changed everything for me, I think we need to sit with that darkness for a moment. To really appreciate the light, you have to understand the shadow it casts. And the events of Good Friday are shrouded in shadow. The day is the climax of Holy Week. It starts with Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, but the mood quickly soars, descending into conspiracy and betrayal. One of his own, Judas Iscariot, agrees to hand him over to religious authorities who saw him as a threat. After one last, emotional meal with his followers, Jesus is arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. What follows is a series of sham trials in the middle of the night, with false witnesses who can't even get their stories straight. He's handed over to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, who seems to know that Jesus is just a political pawn. It was Passover, a festival celebrating freedom, and the Roman authorities were on edge, worried about an uprising. Despite finding no real fault in him, Pilate caves to the demands of a whipped-up crowd chanting, "Crucify him." They choose to release a known killer and revolutionary, Barabbas, instead of Jesus. From there, the horror just escalates. Jesus is beaten, mocked, and forced to carry his own heavy wooden cross through the streets. He's nailed to it, a horrific form of execution saved for the worst criminals, and left to die. He hangs there for 6 hours. The Bible says that for the last 3 of those hours, a strange darkness fell over the land. Then, after crying out to his Father, he dies. For his followers, his friends, and his mother watching this all unfold, there was absolutely nothing good about this day. It looked like all hope was lost. It looked like evil and death had won a final, brutal victory. And yet, for centuries, we've been left with this name, Good Friday. On the surface, it makes no sense at all. It's a question that demands an answer, and that's what sent me looking for one. My search for an answer started where a lot of us start these days, with a tone of reading. I was digging through theological texts, historical accounts, and commentaries, but I kept hitting the same wall. Then, I wandered into a field I hadn't really considered, etymology, the study of where words come from. And that's where I found the first piece of the puzzle. Now, the practice of observing the Friday of Jesus' crucifixion goes all the way back to the early church in the 2nd century. But the English name for it is another story. The phrase, Good Friday, first starts appearing in writing around the 1300s. And what I discovered, what really blew me away, is that back in Middle English, the word good had a different shade of meaning. It didn't just mean nice or pleasant, it could also mean holy or pious. The phrase, Good Friday, wasn't describing the events of the day as being pleasant, it was marking the day itself as holy and sacred. This older sense of the word still hangs on in a few places. Have you ever heard the Bible called the good book? That doesn't mean it's full of only happy stories, it's packed with tragedy and hardship, it means it's a holy book. It was the same for other holidays. Goodtide could refer to Christmas or Shrovetide. So, when our ancestors called this day Good Friday, they were basically calling it Holy Friday. This explains why it's mostly English and Dutch-speaking countries that use this name. Most other languages are more direct. In the Orthodox tradition, it's Great and Holy Friday. In Spanish and French, it's Holy Friday. And, like I mentioned, in German it's Karfreitag or Sorrowful Friday. Some experts even think Good Friday might be a slight corruption of God's Friday, kind of like how goodbye evolved over centuries from the phrase, God be with ye. While that's more of a theory, it points in the same direction. The name is about divinity and holiness, not our feelings about what happened. This was a light bulb moment. For the first time, the name made historical sense. The contradiction wasn't a contradiction after all, it was a fossil of language, an older meaning preserved in a name. The day isn't called Good Friday because the crucifixion was good, but because the day itself is holy. But even with that answer, as satisfying as it was, it still felt incomplete. It explained the what, but not the deeper why. As the meaning of good shifted, the name took on a new, theological weight. The question wasn't just about history anymore, it was about faith. And that's when I heard the story that connected the historical fact to a spiritual truth. The story that truly crystallized everything for me comes from a Columban missionary, Father Frank Hoare, who was working in Fiji. Because Christian holidays were also public holidays there, he was often invited to local schools, many of them attended by Hindu students, to explain what they were all about. During one of these talks, after describing the brutal events of the crucifixion, a young Hindu boy raised his hand and asked a perfectly logical question: why is the day on which Jesus was killed called Good Friday? Surely it was a bad Friday. The boy was coming from his own theological worldview. In some schools of Hindu thought, history is divided into 4 ages, or yugas. The final era, the Kali Yuga, is seen as so corrupt that a divine being comes to abolish wickedness by destroying all the sinful people. From his perspective, a powerful being like Jesus should have used his divine power to destroy his enemies and restore order through force. The crucifixion just looked like weakness, a total failure. Father Hoare's answer to the boy is the story that changed everything for me. He explained that even though Jesus was all-powerful as God, he chose a completely different path. He didn't want to destroy his enemies, he wanted to win them over with love. He taught his followers to meet violence with non-violence, and to overcome evil with love. On the cross, instead of calling down fire from heaven to destroy the people torturing him, he prayed for their forgiveness. This is the theological heart of Good Friday. Christians believe Jesus' death was the ultimate sacrifice for humanity. It was an act that showed God's supreme goodness and unconditional love, an offer of salvation for everyone. The goodness of Good Friday isn't in the pain and the suffering itself, but in the purpose of that suffering. It's good because of what it accomplished. Through his death, Jesus repaired the relationship between humanity and God, opening a door for forgiveness. On that Friday, it absolutely looked like darkness had won. But his resurrection 3 days later, on Easter Sunday, proved that love is stronger than death. The sorrow of Friday gives way to the victory of Sunday. That story reframed the entire idea of good for me. It's not about being comfortable or happy. It's about a redeeming, sacrificial love. It's called Good Friday because on that day, God showed his love for us in the most powerful way imaginable. As the Apostle Peter wrote, "For Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. The day is good because of where it leads us, back to God. That realization, that good means both holy in a historical sense and redemptive in a spiritual one, finally brought me peace with the name. It's a paradox that resolves into a beautiful, complex truth, and it's a story I just had to share. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever struggled with the name Good Friday? What has your journey of understanding been like? Please share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. I read every one, and I really believe we can learn so much from each other. And if this video meant something to you, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone else who might appreciate it. So for me, Good Friday isn't a contradiction anymore. It's like the name itself holds two keys, one that unlocks the history, and one that unlocks the heart of it. Historically, it's an echo from a time when good meant holy. And theologically, it's a signpost pointing to the ultimate good that came from the ultimate sacrifice, the hope of resurrection, the promise of forgiveness, and the triumph of love over death. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest good doesn't come from a place of comfort, but from walking through a great trial for a greater purpose. It's not about the pain of the day itself, but the promise that the pain holds. It's the darkness that makes the dawn of Easter Sunday shine so brightly. Good Friday teaches us that even in what looks like a tragic ending, there can be a message of hope, love, and a new beginning. Thanks for joining me on this journey today. God bless.